This is the Spirit and Wellness Show. News and information from a higher perspective. With your host, Harry Wilkinson. The show where we take a look at the days and weeks, events, happenings in the world of politics, happenings in the world of the media, entertainment, everything that we're exposed to sort of on a daily basis, sometimes whether we like it or not. And we take a step back. We take a look at it from a spiritual perspective, from a perspective of unity, of our connectedness, of our transcendence, if you will. We look at these stories as expressions, stories being the operable word here, expressions of who and what we really are not, and yet it helps us to get to who and what we truly are beyond the everyday mundane sorts of experiences that we have. And this is based on a belief system that says that there is a transcendence, there is something beyond the physical, which most of science lately seems to be bearing out. We're going to talk about that later on in this show. First of all, I want to apologize for the misfire this morning. Coming on a little bit late. I usually come on at 11. I actually tried to come on at 11, but we had some technical difficulties. So you may see in the publishing of the podcast, you may see two episodes with the date March 22nd, 2015, and the title, The World is on Fire. So this is the second one, and this is actually going to be the complete one. So I apologize for that. I also apologize for not being on air last week at my usual time. Again, had some technical difficulties that prevented me from getting on the air, but I'm going to make up for it now. This has got a great show ahead for us. The World is on Fire is the theme today, and we're going to talk about just how much the world actually may not be on fire, or may be on fire, but in a good way. So we're going to look at a book called Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think. We're going to look at some news from the observations from the Curiosity rover about life on Mars. We're going to talk about the latest innovation from Bill Gates, and you'll be very surprised to see how he is creating drinking water and from what. And we're going to look at some facts about the world population and other things from Mr. Hans Rosling and the Gapminder Foundation. So we're going to talk about all of those things, but first, let's get into a little bit of this World is on Fire theme. So this comes from a statement made by Representative Senator Ted Cruz, who is apparently, I believe he's gearing up for some sort of a presidential campaign. I think he's going to run in 2016 for president. And so he's been going around giving speeches, and in New Hampshire, in Barrington, New Hampshire, last weekend, he gave a speech to some of his conservative supporters, and the typical kinds of criticisms of our government now, and he had worked himself up into quite a frenzy, and said the world is on fire. And apparently there was a little 3-year-old with her mom in the crowd, a little girl named Julie Trant, and she was quite surprised by this, and she said, "The world is on fire?" And you can see the clip. If you see the clip and you see how she's asking it, and I know preschoolers because I teach them, I work with them, and I know what was going on with her. But I'll get to that in a minute. Um, and Cruz responds to the little girl saying, "Yes, your world is on fire, but you know what? Your mommy's here, and everyone's here to make sure the world you grow up in is even better." So he was able to quickly tap dance around that one. But 3-year-olds are great. And the reason they're great is that they always bring your absurdity right up to your face. Okay? So and there have been a lot of reporting on this, that the child was terrified and saying, "The world is on fire?" But if you listen and you hear how she's asking the question, it's like, the world is on fire? Really? And she's not scared so much as baffled by why someone would say that, because she can clearly look around her and see that nothing is on fire. Of course, she didn't get a chance to say any more than that, but that's what was going on with her. That's what she was asking, And because he's the adult in the room, or one of the adults in the room, and he's saying something, she's trying to verify that. That's what 3-year-olds do. An adult says something, they'll echo it and try to, kind of verify what they're saying. And and of course, the imagery, of course, is what certainly caught her attention. The idea of a world literally being on fire is what she's, thinking about, obviously. And the confusion comes from the fact that she's looking around and there doesn't seem to be any fire anywhere. There's so many levels of this which are just so wonderful. But the fact that this sort of rhetoric is sort of reframed by 5 words from a 3-year-old really says a lot. It really says a lot. And it goes along with my, and I've said this numerous times on this show and elsewhere, but when we're talking about science in certain ways, and I am not anti-science, please understand, the vast majority of the show today and on most days has a lot to do with science. We're going to be talking a lot about science. But science also has its ego problems, I would say. Its lack of awareness of itself in many ways. And one of the discussions we always have is the intersection between what we think of as spirituality and what we think of as science, and how we got to the point where those things are somehow mutually exclusive. Is kind of baffling, but it's those that think that way. We really are suffering from a shallow understanding of both when we think that way. But in any case, before I get off the rails here, if science that believes that it has the answers to everything and knows everything, or if it doesn't know everything yet, it's on its way to finding out. But if you approach science humbly, and if you approach scientists like a 3-year-old, and let's take a very simple scientific question. Why does it rain? Well, meteorologists or other scientists will give you all kinds of information about cumulus clouds and jet streams and this and that and the other, and how they work together, and how it causes rain. And then you can just ask again, but why? Because what he's explained to you, and he'll continue to explain more, thinking that you didn't get it the first time. But what he or she is explaining to you is how it rains, not why. Science doesn't have an answer for that. But that's where they get confused. They think the how is the why. And it isn't. science is great at putting together and starting to understand the intricate mechanics of our universe. And we're at a rudimentary understanding of that, although many think we're a lot smarter about these things than I think we actually are. But when it comes to the why, when it comes to the depth of things, science can't do that on its own. It shouldn't be expected to, in certain ways. But it should also be guided by that kind of an understanding about things that exist transcendent of the material world. And things like quantum physics give us an idea about that, they give us an idea about how the universe doesn't work at all like we thought it has for many, many years. And how, the thought processes, the creation of the world that we have, scientifically espoused, that is the Big Bang Theory, how that is still a huge mystery. A huge, huge mystery. Nobody knows. Nobody really knows. So, okay. Yeah, that is the world is on fire. So let's look at this, answer this girl's question. Is the world really on fire? And, well, let's take a look at some things that are going on in the world of science and are going on in the world of the world and talk about that. Now, it's certainly understandable that that's a common reaction. It's certainly an understandable reaction to say that the world is on fire, because sometimes it actually seems that way. It actually looks that way. If you look at these stories, as I said, if you look at them from the typical way that news media would like you to look at them, which are as things that agitate you, push your button, get you to spend more time watching their coverage of something, and thereby be more exposed to their advertising revenue, and increase their bottom line. If you look at it that way, you'd be convinced that the world is on fire. But there are some things that actually are telling us how much the world is, you could say that the world is maybe on fire with radiation, in a way. We have had some nuclear mishaps, but considering all the nuclear technology we have hanging around and all the horrific things that could happen, it's truly not just amazing, it's almost miraculous that we haven't had a nuclear nightmare of epic proportions, which we could have at any point, at any time, at any day. I just read a report about how we had a very powerful solar storm in the atmosphere last week, and that these solar storms can knock out communications, can knock out our satellite, can really pull the rug out from under our modern way of life. And yet, it didn't happen. But it could always happen, yet somehow it doesn't. That just is an amazing thing to think about the many, many ways that the world could be turned on its head, and that it doesn't happen. Every day, every day. Okay, so now we want to talk about I was talking about how uh, science has, sometimes difficulty answering questions that are simple, like a 3-year-old's question. The world is on fire, because it's really not geared to answer the simple questions. Uh, and one of the simple questions is, what is the universe made from? And nobody's been able to answer that one. But as usual, science thinks it's it's going to have an answer soon, because the Large Hadron Collider is coming back next week at CERN. It will be fired up again, and this time, now that they've found the Higgs boson particle, and that has confirmed a lot of what we thought what quantum physicist theorists have been talking about for a long time. Um, Now they are looking for what they call dark matter. Dark matter is something that was sort of uh, discovered by astronomer Vera Rubin in around 1974. And basically, what she noticed was that stars orbiting the gravity-providing black holes at the center of spiral galaxies like ours did so at the same speed regardless of how far they were from the center. And according to theories of gravity and so forth, that shouldn't happen in what are apparently comparable systems. So what that led her to believe was that there was something that she couldn't see, something more there, and that's where dark matter comes in. It's a generic term for the stuff that has to be there, but that you can't see. And science has no idea what it is. Uh, they're trying, they're trying. They're looking at gas and dust and dead stars and fundamental particles, and as they start to understand more about, quarks and gluons of quantum physics and so on, they're looking at those. But they still don't quite understand. They know that there are these particles they call WIMPs, and that's an acronym for weakly interacting massive particles. It's a description of how the dark matter behaves, but it doesn't tell you what it is. It just means they're particles that interact weakly. And they don't do what ordinary matter is, or what we expect ordinary matter to do. So they're going to be looking more closely at these particles now with the Large Hadron Collider, and they're going to see if they can explore some of these WIMPs and find out more about them. And with technology today, we've got these scientists, and they are doing computer models of how this universe might be created, and they can actually create universes within computer simulations, uh, based on their suppositions about what dark matter is and what it's doing. And in those computer simulations of the universe, they can make dark matter visible. So, I'm not going to get too deep into this because it's very complex, as these things are. But dark matter has been a long time mystery, and no one knows what it is. There's more mysteries, exciting mysteries, in science than there are so-called facts, and that's what makes science, to me, exciting. Being in the mystery. And that's what makes it frustrating for most who don't really like to be in the mystery. That was my last podcast was entitled Being in the Mystery, and it was about how people need to be reminded about mystery and that most of life is just that. And the comfort level that some have and some don't on exactly what the mystery is and how to live in it. But anyway, we're still talking about, is the world on fire? Well, I would say no. And, before we leave space, though, and this is in the vein of what we were talking about, um, we're exploring dark matter now, and we may find some interesting things out about that. That's a very hopeful thing. But the Curiosity rover has fairly well confirmed that the Viking lander in 1976, which thought it had found life, but then the conclusions of the scientists involved in that were sort of dismissed. Now it's been reconfirmed by Curiosity rover through something they call wet chemistry tests, that there are the presence of gases that can only be created by living organisms. Now, of course, this life that we're talking about is microbial life, but it's life, and that's where life starts, in the living microbes. And so what Curiosity rover has found is that there are these living microbes in the soils that are emitting these gases, which means that there is life on Mars. Isn't it funny how you'd think that might be a lead story somewhere, on CNN or something, but seems to have slipped by a lot of people. Interesting. But yes, Curiosity rover has confirmed that there is life on Mars. They're going to continue to look at old seabeds and fossils, but my prediction is that they're going to find much more exciting and dramatic, a bit more exciting and dramatic signs of life too. And that's when it will probably hit the news, because nobody cares about microbes, right? But that's life. And if there's microbes, then there could be more. So, there we go. Life on Mars, confirmed. So now I want to talk about this book here. It's a book that was written by Peter H. Diamandis and Stephen Kotler. And it's become I believe it's become a bestseller at this point. It's called Abundance. The future is better than you think. And, I love the title, because we're always talking, the spiritual people, we're always talking about abundance and how we live in abundance. But it always seems to be something that we say with one side of our mouth while we're worried about, poverty and lack, and, holding on to those ideas of lack on the other side. So it's always work to kind of let go of ideas of lack. But this book is telling us how we are living in abundance right now, and it basically deals mostly with these technologies and the exponential technologies. In other words, the rapid changes in technology that are and will continue to make us able to do things we couldn't think of before. And the way I think of it, before I tell you more about the details of this book, the way I think about it is, there's been a lot of talk about, and I certainly am one who, so far in my life, at the age I am at, I haven't made the level of money and material rewards and success that my father did at my age years ago. And there's much talk about how our generation is not going to do as well as our parents' generation. However, what I would say is, even though I don't have the, in today's dollars, I'm not making the same kind of dollars that my father had, the life I'm living, the life I'm able to live, is better than anything he could ever have afforded at that time, because it just didn't exist, the things that we have today. the technology we have today, to be able to, at the push of a button, call up any piece of music that you would like to hear by any uh, performer or composer, living or dead, by simply tapping in a few words in your computer. You can call that up. You can call up any information that you need in seconds on your phone. You could carry all the music that you have ever liked or listened to, your entire music collection. You can carry it around in your pocket. Uh, I can watch movies instantly from my living room. I can watch live programming on TV, hit a button on my remote, and pause it, and just make it stay there. And then I can rewind it or go forward in it immediately. I can stop the stream of time. These are things that would have been completely impossible in, you know, my dad's time. Or if they were possible, he would have had to have been a multi-billionaire to afford the technology to do it. But now it comes with my cable package. So, in a certain ways, maybe yes, we're not living as you know, as abundantly as maybe our parents' generation did, but in many ways, we are in so much more abundance than we could possibly understand. Okay, there's 4 points in the book. Again, this book is called Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think. First is about technologies in computing, energy, medicine, and many other areas. They are improving at an exponential rate and will soon enable breakthroughs that, as I said, seem impossible today. And I gave you some examples of that, not in energy or medicine, but just in, you know, our everyday life. Number 2, these technologies have allowed independent innovators to achieve startling advances in many areas of technology with little money or manpower. In other words, you can create, you can innovate with just using the Web 2.0 and very little money. That's pretty amazing. The technology has created a generation of techno-philanthropists such as Bill Gates, who are using their billions to try to solve seemingly unsolvable problems such as hunger and disease. And the lives of the world's poorest people are being improved substantially because of technology. And there's a lot of truth to that. And just to supplement that, here's an article that was recently actually part of HBO's show called Vice. And Bill Gates has been developing a machine that creates electricity and fresh, clean water out of human poo. Yes, that's right. Human crap. He's able to turn into drinking water. The machine uses human waste to generate potable water and electricity that can be sold as a product back to the community. With this machine, human sewage will never go to waste again. So he's, put in what to, most of us would seem like a substantial amount of money into creating this project. But really, about 1.5 million is what he estimated the cost to be. And he's paid for this first one, which is in Senegal. And there's a lot of hurdles to this technology, and he also, I think there's a lot of hurdles to, because he's already trying to monetize it, and try to use it to, then sell the water and electricity rather than just providing water and electricity. But, I'm not going to quibble with that. I think there's, problems with that. If you have a machine that can turn human waste into electricity and water, you know, I don't know. Do you want to charge people for that? I guess the process itself is, has expenses involved, and perhaps that needs to be taken care of. But well, anyway, that's a discussion for another day. But the fact of the matter is, and this going alongside with this book called Abundance, this is just a very good example of how our technology is able to solve the problems of lack of water in places like Senegal, in which there are severe drought conditions, as I'm sure you know, but certainly there's an abundance of poo. So, world on fire? That sounds like a world on fire with ideas to me. That's what that sounds like. And just to finish it off, I want to talk about this wonderful website from a gentleman named Hans Rosling. It's called gapminder.org, and he created the Gapminder Foundation, in which he looks at statistics over time, and just through statistics shows how our world is getting better and better in many ways that we don't understand, or that popular belief has ignored. One issue he talks about is world population. Everybody thinks that the population of the world is going to is exploding and is going to continue to explode. But he looks at statistics and he tells you that's not what is happening. That yes, there are significant increases in population in Africa and Asia, and in these emerging countries that are developing more and more. Their populations will double by mid-century. However, in Europe and the U.S., the population is dropping fairly drastically. So there will be more people in Asia and Africa and less in the U.S. and Europe, which is basically going to even out the population rather than explode the population. And it's understandable that in those areas which are now, and again, another sign that our world is getting better, places that have had to live in the dark ages and had been crushed by poverty for so long, now coming out of that, are now becoming successful societies where people can be lifted out of poverty. And while our middle class seems to be declining a bit, worldwide, more countries are able to have a middle class. Now, of course, that makes it difficult for Americans to understand, who aren't particularly happy about our middle class kind of declining. But understandably, for so many years, where we've had a thriving middle class, and so many other countries in the world haven't been able to have it, it's probably understandable that some sort of correction has to take place in which more people can participate around the world in having middle class opportunities and prosperity. And perhaps in order to do that, we have to take a little bit of a drop. But I'm certain that it can and will come back, and we'll find a way to do that. All right. Well, looks like we are running low on time. We're actually running past our time period here.